So it's my joy to introduce one of our members, Gina Gardner, who through another member, Harold Asman, connected up to last year or the year before, I can't remember now, Fatima Whitbred, who's in the UK. And she's a celebrity in the UK because she was in the Olympic Games. She held the world record, and she's very well known. But what we haven't known her for really is for her background. She was a child in care and how she suffered as a child in care. And now Gina, because she's met Fatima, has agreed to work with her to publicize and create a charity that will make a huge difference to the current children in care in the UK, so they won't be lost. They won't fall through the cracks of the system. And I was blessed to go to a summit that Gina and Fatima put on last month. It blew my brains out with how bad it was, how awful the situation is, but also the people that are so good and want to do something about it. So I couldn't resist asking Gina to share her journey to that point, and also how we can help in some small way to make a difference for that group as well. Over to you, Gina. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got two apologies to make. One is that I'm having technical problems, so I couldn't finish the PowerPoint presentation, but that's probably no bad thing. But I've got a couple of slides. And the second is I've got two 9-week-old kittens who are causing mayhem. I have just shut them in the next door room, but I've already heard a crash in the last 5 minutes. So I do apologize. Let's see if I can.
That's called life, isn't it? It gets in the way.
It's crazy.
We might have to see them at the end though, Gina. You know.
Yeah. There we go. So actually, everything that happened, and that's not worked. Everything that happened is actually down to Harold, who is also a member, because he invited both Fatima and I to take part in an event that was to publicize or to work with. Can people see my screen?
We can see an email, I think.
Oh, yes,
that's it's on Gmail, Gina.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm gonna give up on it. It's been a pain in the what's it. So let's go back to you. So it's all Harold's fault. He invited us to both speak at an event that
Can you stop your share, Gina? Otherwise, the recording will be showing you Alan Brown on this email. Lovely.
You're and why not? And why not?
It's been a pain today. Harold invited both Fatima and I to speak at an event that was the last activity in a week-long event around mental health. And Fatima was invited to share her life experience, and I was invited to do the last talk, which is around my particular thing, which is around leadership and the fact that if we wanted things to be different, that we needed a different quality of leadership moving forward. It was an interesting event because we were at Westminster Chapel, which has a very, very high stage, which you approach up a ladder, more or less. And the event was due to finish much earlier than it actually did, but many people spoke longer than they were destined to. And so the event went on very late. And so at the end of the event, I said to Fatima, I'm going back to Liverpool Street. I've got a taxi. Would you like to come? I'm a wheelchair user, although I can walk short distances. And tubes aren't very accessible. And so where we would probably have said hi to one another and perhaps had a 5-minute chat, we talked all the way back to Liverpool Street Station. It then turned out that she was on the same train as me. I invited her to become a guest on my radio show, and she started to talk about her life journey and her mission. And I'd heard the story when she was speaking. So Fatima was abandoned and left to die as a baby. And for a couple of days, neighbours could hear baby crying, but nobody coming and going from a nearby flat. And then they phoned the police, who broke the door down, and they found a baby with malnutrition and the most dreadful nappy rash. She was in hospital for 7 months, and during that time, she became a ward of court. She was then within children's homes, 2 different children's homes, until the age of 14. But within those homes, it's interesting that prior to my talking, it's all been about love, because there wasn't any. it was very much, we will service your needs and keep you clean and clothed. They were always hungry, never quite enough food. But there was only one person in all of that time that Fatima remembers who showed her love, and that was a woman who she called my bright shining star. The one thing that saved her really was sport. And she was very good at a whole range of different sports, but started to work with athletics, with the javelin. And she talks about the fact that she chose that not only because she fancied throwing spears at people, but also that the guy who she'd seen practicing was tall and blonde and rather dishy, and so she thought, I'll have a bit of that. And so she went to learn to play to use the javelin, and was very good at it. And her javelin coach invited her to come and stay with them in the summer holidays, and eventually adopted her. And with her javelin coach, she became a 4-time Olympian. She became a world record holder. And one of the things that she talks about is that however much healing you do, the trauma of being in care stays with you. And in some ways, those people who survive, what it does is it creates a superpower. But for many people who go through the care system, that trauma informs their life negatively the whole time. And so initially, Fatima said to me, my schooling was interrupted. I'm not very great at writing letters and things. Would you help me write a few letters? Now, that meeting with Harold's meeting was in October 2023. And I said, yeah, of course, I'll help you write some letters. And then I need a few reports. Will you write reports? By December, Fatima said to me, I want to set up a charity, and I've started the process, but will you help me? And so between December and February, a lot of time was taken up in terms of getting charitable status for the charity Fatima's UK campaign. And by this time, I was well and truly sort of embroiled in what was going on. Fatima had started talking to people some 6 months before I got involved. I call her Aladdin, because one of the things that she's very good at is she knocks on a door and says to the Prime Minister or to the head of this place or that place, can I come and talk to you? And they say, of course, when would you like to come? Whereas I recognise as a mere mortal, if I knocked on the door and said, I'd like to speak to you, they'd just laugh and say, on your bike. So by February, we'd got charitable status. That in itself was a bit of a miracle because it normally takes much longer, but we had some help. And then really started to go with her on these meetings. And one of the very early meetings was to meet the English Commissioner for Children. Now, every country has a commissioner for children. I was singularly unimpressed when we went. The lady was much more interested in the scones and tea that she'd just had rather than talking about looked after children. And we were told in no uncertain terms, don't be aspirational. Well, those of you that know me well know that that's red rag to a bull. And Fatima and I have very, very similar values, and the same with her. We were also told at that meeting by the deputy leader of one of the biggest children's charities, no, you can't be aspirational. And we felt that that's one of the reasons why the system is in such disarray, because the reality is that since the 1960s, when Fatima was in care, the life chances of young people who go through the care system is no better. And in many ways, their life chances are much worse than if they were living with their parents. And in the last few years, and I don't want to get political about this because every political party of every colour has played its part in not tackling the issue. But things like Home Start, which used to do a lot of early intervention, and Sure Start, they've been disbanded. Lots of the projects that were making a difference were disbanded because of the upfront cost, not recognising that by investing early on, the savings in terms of not only the quality of life for those young people, but in terms of benefits and the call on other professionals, ambulance, health service, prison and probation, and so on, is hugely increased because these young people don't have the best chance in life. Could you show me by raising your hand, how many of you have got children? So, and I want you to think about what I'm going to tell you now, and I want you to think about this in the context of your children. So kids are taken into care, and the two most common reasons for children being taken into care is that they're being neglected or they're being abused. So I want you to think about your child and think about, when I give you these facts and statistics, think about how it would be for your child and how much support you have put in day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year to your children. And if your children are grown up, how often you still provide support and help for your children moving forward. My background, those of you that know me, is that I was a head teacher. And one of the few things that gave me really, really bad stress was when I felt that social services were either not taking action or were taking the wrong action for children in my school who were either being abused or neglected. And my first job when I left headship after 20 years, in 2005, my first big contract was to work with Essex County Council, looking at the interface between foster carers, schools, and social services. And what I discovered then is there were so many misunderstandings about what was going on. And so social workers thought national curriculum meant that you could take a child out of a school on Thursday and put them into a new school on Friday, and they would carry on where they left off. Of course, that's not the case. And so people were using the same language, but actually meaning different things. As we went on these visits, I became more and more aware of something that Fatima had known for a long time, is that the mentality and the culture of these organizations was very much in silos. And one of the reasons I believe that one of the biggest charities wanted us not to be aspirational is because they've got a vested interest in reality of things not changing. This guy was earning in excess of 160K. Over 70% of their admin, of the money they raised, and they raised money not only from fundraising, but big government contracts to provide services, over 70%, well over 70%, went in wages and admin. Whereas the small charities, and Louise can tell you, the small charities are getting frozen out because local authorities are strapped for cash, and that's one of the things that's easy money for them to retrieve, because they're not actually cutting their services, they're cutting services by default. What we recognize is that there were big egos. You know, people were doing some great work, but they didn't want to share, or there was no mechanism to share. And so, for example, there's some amazing stuff going on in Birmingham, but 20 miles down the road, people trying to do something similar didn't know of the other project. And so all of that wealth of experience was getting lost. So I now want to take you through to some statistics, and I want you to think about your children. So children taken into care through no fault of their own, it is not unusual for those children to be moved, and they call them placements, not home, move placements 10 or more times in a year. That means changing school. It means you lose your friends. If you had a pet, it means you lose your pet. You lose contact with your family. Many of the provisions now are private and are floated on the stock market. And so if there is a place in Strathclyde and you happen to come from Essex, well, it's cheaper to move you to Strathclyde than it is to find another placement locally. So these kids are moved up and down the country. They are often split from their siblings, and they are often moved time after time after time. If you have moved your child because you've moved house, I want you to think about how long it's taken your child to settle. The statistics show that it takes about 6 months. If a child is in a secure and stable family, it takes about 6 months for that child to recoup what they lose by moving, by being unsettled, by not being at their optimum, by catching up. Because although they may be ahead in some things, they won't be in others. That often when they are in these placements, whether that's foster care or residential care, that there is no inspection that looks at the quality of their experience. They inspect homes for, have you got the policies? Has it got a stair gate if you've got small children? Have you got the right plugs? But nothing about, does this look, feel like a home? Are there any photographs? Does this child, are they able to bring friends home for tea? Are they made to feel that this is their home, or is this just a holding place? And far too many are just a holding place. Foster carers, some of them are absolutely fabulous, but some of them do it because it's their income. And I've heard and spoken to many children and young people who talk about the family having steak and trips while they had beans on toast, or the family had chocolate biscuits while they had rich tea, or the family going on a family holiday, but them being then farmed out to somewhere else because they're not going on the family holiday. I want you to think about your children. What would that feel like if that was one of your kids who was a second-class citizen with no sense that I belong? And so one of the problems is that the initial trauma gets built on time and time again to the point where they don't trust anybody. What's the point of making a decent relationship with someone? Because I'm going to be moved in, I don't know when. And often they're moved with all of their belongings just dumped into a black rubbish sack. And they go to the next place with all of their worldly goods in a rubbish sack. What does that tell you about you? They often have huge waits for mental health support, and by the age of 14, 50% of looked after children have already been diagnosed with mental health issues. That's the ones that are diagnosed. But if you think about moving from place to place, you lose your place in the queue. It's more common for looked after children to end up in the juvenile justice system. Why? Are they intrinsically more criminal minded? Well, no, I don't think they are. But if they're a bit bolshy, where a parent would manage it and tell them to go to their room and say you're grounded for the next 57 years, it's quite common for foster carers or residential home workers to call the police. And because many of the police are not trauma informed, although that's improving, many of those children end up in juvenile detention, which is a place where they learn how to be better criminals and nothing else. 1% of the population is looked after. 33.33% of the prison population under 25 have come through the care system. At the age of 18, you've got to leave, whether you're ready or not. You're given 2 visits in the year. Many of them are put in a hotel, a hostel with drug addicts, prostitutes, people who've left prison. They're given 2 visits during the year, given £2,000 or £3,000, depending on the local authority, and told to get on with it. Consequently, within 2 years, over a third of them are homeless. Now, these statistics are pretty stark and pretty dark, and I could go on. But as I became more and more engaged with hearing the stories and recognizing what was going on, it was pretty early on that we decided what we wanted to do is to bring all of these different organizations together under one roof, because then nobody talked to anybody. There was no central register of who did what and where you could go and pick someone's brains. it was all in silos, and people were very territorial. And so we decided that we would have a summit, and we wanted to engage people from every different aspect. And so the summit, we had 120 contributors from different organizations, some decision makers, politicians, heads of service, people running the thing, the young people themselves speaking, because we wanted to bring them together so that they could collaborate, so they could communicate effectively. So 120 organizations were represented. We had 49 exhibitors represented, 500 delegates on the first day, just under 400 on the second day. And the atmosphere was absolutely electric. People were talking to one another. People were finding out that just down the road to them, there was somebody doing something similar. So we had speakers, panels, breakout rooms based on 4 themes. Health and holistic well-being, that was health and education. Home, so early intervention, foster care, residential care, kinship care and adoption. Leaving care, housing, employment, financial education, being police and probation, and then society projects, lots of the power of sport, art and technology, and all sorts of other things. And we brought these under one roof. And what I would say to you is, if you want to get involved, I know that we cannot leave this to the politicians. They failed miserably and they can't do it on their own. And so there are a number of ways that you can help. One of those is, if you are someone who's got space in your home and you've got love in your heart to give a child a foster placement, there are 10,000 foster carers short at the moment. And that number is looking to go up to 25,000 in the next 5 years. If you are a business and you can support a young person who is leaving care, not just give them a job, because these are vulnerable. They're often emotionally not as mature as their peers. They don't have the support. But if you give them the right support, then they provide really great, loyal workers. We were at an event last week where 4 young people, this has come as a result of the summit, were given 4 weeks work experience in a restaurant. They then were helped to cook a dinner for 30 people at the Italian embassy. This is from the Italian Chamber of Commerce in London. That was great. And the kids' face when they got a round of applause was amazing. But what was even more amazing is that they were given a place on a permanent 2-year-long training program with the offer of a job at the end. Now, you think about the restaurants, they're crying out for decent chefs. We're just in the very early stages of building up a program for Italian restaurants. We've got another couple of nationality restaurants in London who are also interested in doing it. You can find a win-win situation. You can donate if you go to the charity website, Fatima's UK campaign. But the last thing is, we've got a petition going out, which is providing the government with a draft white paper of the things that we think will make a difference. And I'll put the links in into the chat box. Please sign it, but get other people to sign it. It's been like pulling teeth, and it costs nothing, just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to finish there. If anybody's got any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Jill, I'm not sure if you want me to set a question for a breakout group, but I'm very happy to do that if you want me to.
Well, I think we'll just have a short breakout, but it would be nice just to talk around what you've just been sharing with us. So if you do have a question, we could take into that as well.
I was really thinking about the fact we cannot leave this to government and local authorities. Not only have they singularly failed, but actually it's the society, I think, can find the solutions. Things like this Italian restaurant and, which country is Buenos Aires in? My brain's gone blank. That's one of the Chamber of Commerce that they're going to look at those restaurants to mirroring the project. But if you think about your own business or people that you know, the likelihood is that we can find a solution for, even if it's only one or two, that's one or two who will have the opportunity to succeed. And it seems to me these kids are set up for failure. It's for us to find ways to help them succeed. And their resilience, their capacity to get out of the terrible start they've had in life, makes them the most amazing people. And we listened to some stories. I ran a panel which was called Success Looks Different to Everyone. Their stories were harrowing, but their success was amazing. And I believe it's up to each one of us to do something. So my question is, what ways can we, as individuals, as a collective, through collaboration global, as a society, how can we make a difference that makes the difference to individuals, to more numbers than are at the moment? Because if you look at the number in higher education, 50% of the general population, it's 17% have looked after kids. Wow. Their education is very badly affected.
So there are geniuses amongst there are geniuses in that group that we're just letting slip through our fingers for the benefit of everybody, just because we can't come up with these solutions. And as you say, we don't have to wait for government to solve all our problems. We can solve some of them ourselves. So if we can